What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're going to grab one more phone call, then we're going to do some news here. Fred in Michigan, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. You brought up John Stadtmiller relative to Stan in Washington. A couple of weeks ago, John gave a recitation on all the entities surrounding Donald and his administration. Mm-hmm. And I think I brought up when I called last week, Henry Makow, M-A-K-O-W, Henry
yes.
Makow. And I gave you a citation from 21 August of last year, 21 August, at henrymakow.com. And he featured an article entitled, Is Shabbat, or Shabbat Lubavitch. And by the way, David Duke, right?
Yes.
David Duke, I happened to catch one of his presentations recently, and he focused on Shabbat Lubavitch because Kushner is a Shabbat Lubavitch member.
Okay.
And by the way, he and Ivanka spent the entire afternoon and night at the tomb of Menachem Mendel Schneerson. And
where are you going with this?
Yeah, good question. You were saying we don't want to paint with a broad stroke, right? We want to be specific, because I agree with you. Some of my best friends when I was a paper boy were children of my Jewish paper customers. Okay, what Henry Makow does, and others like David Duke, is they focus on the really hardcore criminals. And in Henry Makow's article, Is Shabbat a Criminal Racist Terrorist Organization? He presents the evidentiary proof that it is.
Yes.
And Mike, there is this law that was enacted 20th of March of 91 with H.W. Bush as president, and it's called Education Day. And Menachem Mendel Schneerson and the Shabbat Lubavitch folks, and I think Henry Makow has this at that 21 August 16, installment. It's all about Noahide laws. Education Day in honor of Menachem Mendel Schneerson is Education Day about Noahide laws. And what it is, Mike, is the Noahide laws are directly derived from the Talmud, and the very first one is not to worship, false idols. And according to Shabbat and other entities like that, anyone who worships any god other than the god of Shabbat or Judaism, which is Lucifer, Baphomet.
Well, wait a minute. Okay, this is. First of all, this is going on way too long, and second of all, you need to remember my first wife was Jewish, and the fact of the matter is that the God that is worshipped by the Jews is the same exact God that's worshipped by the Christians, the same exact God that's worshipped by the Muslims, goes all the way back to Abraham and the creation of monotheism. And so when you're coming on out there, Mike, I'm sorry, Fred, we're going to let you go here. I was hoping that he was going to make a point here. I think when we're talking about Jared Kushner, let's talk about whether he was in fact trying to, or was being offered a deal to alter Trump's policy on Russian sanctions in exchange for financing. That's a legitimate news story. Where he and Ivanka went when they were on tour in Israel is irrelevant. Okay? All right, we're going to do some news stories here. Down in the Philippines, as you know, all of a sudden ISIS is working to bring down President Duterte, And all of this goes back to when Duterte said the drug problem in the Philippines is out of control, and he cracked down on them, including death sentences for drug dealers. And remember when Obama went down there and said, no, don't interfere with the drug dealers. You have to treat them gently the way we do in the United States of America. That's what works best, really, at least from our point of view. And Duterte said no, and he's cracked down on the drug trade inside the Philippines. And now all of a sudden he's being demonized in the corporate media. ISIS is all of a sudden showing up to try and take over his country. And even Chelsea Clinton went down and chastised Duterte over a joke about soldiers raping women, at which point Duterte replied back to her, "What was your reaction when your father was messing around with Monica Lewinsky?" So what this is all about, again, is preserving the drug trade for U.S. government interests like the CIA. That's what is driving all of this. We are living in a narcocracy. Go back and study the history of prohibition. When they made alcohol illegal, all of a sudden there were huge sums of money pouring into the hands of the gangsters, and they literally reshaped American politics to suit themselves. And then finally, when they were entrenched as the new political elite, they allowed prohibition to be repealed so that they didn't face a threat from up-and-coming gangsters able to use the same financing mechanism they did. Alcohol went back to being cheap, and it was cut off. Now the game is being played again, only this time with narcotics. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates just now rejoining the network. Interestingly enough, as we get into the economic news, Netflix is one of the poster children for the tech boom version 2.0, the golden cut. And it is revealing how something has gone cattywampus in the way Wall Street values companies. Because we're looking at a company that is going to have a $2 billion cash loss this year and is yet claimed to be worth $70 billion. And we have seen time and again of a lot of companies, they have their IPO, they're valued at huge amounts of money, and then the stock crashes on out. Are we seeing pump and dumps? Is Wall Street now living almost entirely on fraud? Very well be. We just put up an article from the Los Angeles Times about a study that's showing that the vast majority of tax evasion in this country is occurring up there at the very top, the 0.1%. They're masters at being able to keep all their money and not share it with anybody else. Remember what I talked about, a recycling mechanism, where the money, when it accumulates to the top of that pyramid, it must be brought back down to the bottom so that ordinary workers and middle-class people can trade their labor for decent wages and salaries in order to pump that wealth back into the system and keep it running. And that has disappeared as we descend into fascism, and that's why our economy is heading for a major upset. Another story coming on out from governmentslaves.info. Because of the skyrocketing tax burden, more and more Americans are renouncing their citizenship. They're getting out and saying, we just can't do it anymore. There used to be a conventional wisdom that you could tax a nation to prosperity. It's never proven out. You can tax a nation into ruin and collapse, and that's what's going on right now. Now, the Federal Reserve Board has announced a $41 million penalty and consent cease and desist order against Deutsche Bank over Deutsche Bank's, basically, the polite phrase is, related to compliance by the U.S. banking operations with anti-money laundering laws. In other words, they got caught laundering drug money, and this is the fine they're going to pay, and it's probably a lot less than they were making laundering the drug money. So they'll pay the fine, much of it will come off their taxes as a business loss, and they'll just go right on doing that. There is a huge amount of fraud in Wall Street, and it's not just Wall Street. Interesting little article out of Canadian Broadcasting, where apparently there has been a financial services representative who's been conducting an investigation for the CBC, basically saying that forgery in the finance industry is epidemic up in Canada where they're basically using whiteout on documents, they're forging and photocopying customer signatures, adding initials to blank documents. And they're saying it's as much as 85% of the backroom sales team are doing it. The financial industry is a giant fraud operation. Now, over in Great Britain, British Telecom is thinking that they're going to have to shut down what they call their gold-plated defined benefit pension plan to try and close its looming deficit. They're losing money. People are going without services. They're not able to cover their overhead. And the British Telecom's pension scheme deficit in 2016 is thought to be somewhere around £14 billion, up from just $10 billion just the year before. And now British Telecom is entering negotiations with the pension trustees about the future funding of the scheme. In other words, everybody who spent their life working for British Telecom and paying into a pension plan, they are not going to get the pensions they were promised. And we're seeing that all over the world. We're seeing it here in the United States of America. Everybody's talking about the pension crisis. And much of the American pension crisis goes back to that 2008 mortgage-backed security fraud, because those mortgage-backed securities were rated AAA by Wall Street's pet rating agencies, which made it legal for pension plans to buy them, invest in them. The fraud collapsed. Those bundles went bust, and the pensions are now defunded. And nobody has the courage to stand up and say Wall Street fraud created this mess. Now they're saying, oh, the pensioners are expecting way too much. They're living too long. We've got to increase the retirement age. And government looks the other way here. Story from Die Welt over in Germany. Apparently there's a big problem with care homes being taken over by organized crime. And they've created a systematic fraud network where they're defrauding pensions and government of the money, and the patients in the care homes are not getting the care they're supposed to. There was a big stink about a year ago on the mainland where organized crime had moved into these property management companies, where they would get on the inside and they would hand all the contracts for maintenance and repair and building to mafia-linked companies who would charge very high prices and produce very poor quality work. The repairs and the construction would fall apart almost immediately, and they just churn the money out of these homeowner associations. Now, here's a very alarming story, and I want you to pay attention to it. This is from RINF.com. And the headline reads, credit scores hit record high as recession wounds heal. And the gist of the story is that credit scores for U.S. consumers are going up. They're going up. See, it's time to start borrowing again. Well, maybe. Maybe. Remember when they were talking about subprime mortgages back in 2008? And then more recently, they're talking about subprime auto loans, and they were going bust. And all of a sudden, the term subprime is now poison. So now, instead of giving out loans to people whose credit scores are too low, it's easier to simply change the way the credit scores are being calculated to run them up above the threshold for a loan. I think that may be what's going on here. I don't think people's credit scores are automatically going up because we still have 90 million Americans who are out of work. People don't want to borrow. This is just another way to try and trick people into borrowing, thinking everything's going to be okay. And the wise and prudent thing right now for everybody is to be trying to get out of debt. Pay off those credit cards. Get them zeroed out as quickly as you can. Apparently, Michael Kors is planning to shutter anywhere between 100 and 125 stores. I got to tell you, we go down to the local mall here, at the bottom of the hill, and it was rather amazing on Memorial Day. Not a lot of people shopping. People just don't have money. We have a very good friend who just lucked out in terms of, he knows a guy who owns a restaurant who bought a huge amount of steak expecting there were going to be a lot of people showing up at the restaurant for Memorial Day, and they didn't. And now he's literally having to give the meat away before it goes bad. Restaurant activity is a very good indicator of what's really going on with our economy. And again, look at the car prices. If anybody actually had money to spend on a car, now is a great time to get a car. Look at those ads. The amazing prices, amazing terms. And now apparently the price of used cars is starting to plummet because people can't even buy used cars anymore. We're broke out here. Now there's been a bit of a big stink starting to happen on college campuses, and it has to do with something being done by the Israel Defense Forces. It's called the Gideon Project, and it involves sending American Israeli reservists from the IDF onto college campuses to basically attack pro-Palestinian demonstrations, cause a ruckus. And of course, they don't really have a right to be there. They're not actually students. They're just being sent on in there to try and shout down supporters of Palestine. And it reached, at one point, the UC Irvine campus literally had to call the police to escort these guys out. There we are. Now, another little story. This gets into the gun grabber situation. Apparently a history teacher walked onto school campus carrying what looked to be a rifle case, triggered a lockdown, called the police, went completely bonkers. Turns out the rifle was a recreated Civil War weapon, a replica, a non-firing replica. You see them in catalogs and toy stores all the time. He was bringing it in to show the students what a Civil War rifle looked like. And everybody went ballistic. Non-firing weapon. Now, here's another story. This one I actually was very disgusted with. And apparently, this being reported out of Post News D2. And it talks about a teacher was busted with meth and heroin at her school. She's accused of stealing from her own students to feed her drug habit. When the police arrested her, they found needles in her purse, including exposed needles, which is very, very dangerous. One was already loaded up with heroin. She had 4 grams of meth. Aren't they keeping an eye on those teachers? Or is it, I guess, as long as they're talking Common Core, doesn't really matter? You know, having been a teacher myself, I feel that teachers have a sense of responsibility to their students, not just to teach them the subject matter of the course, but to set an example on just how to present in society, how to have an ethical, moral core. And you know, I'm not a proselytizer, but if you're a teacher and those students are looking up to you, there's a responsibility that goes with that. And I think I find that very appalling. Very appalling that would. All right, let's talk a little bit about computers here. This next one is fun. Ooh, I wish I could have one of these. Intel has just revealed its most powerful PC chip yet. They're calling it the Core i9. It has 18 processing cores, and it clocks at teraflop speed. And it is a very expensive chip. It's $2,000. It is aimed at users carrying out heavy tasks like video editing, 3D modeling, special effects creation. And boy, looking back on the hardware we had to use in the days of Robert Abel and Associates, wow, a supercomputer on a chip. It's just dazzling. More about this when we come back. Hello, I'm America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking about Intel's newest chip. It's called the Core i9. It has 18 processing cores in it. It's benchmarked out at teraflop speeds, which is amazing. And for young people, they may say, okay. For those of us who've been around since the early days of home computers, this is just astounding. And one of the things that does remind me that I am now an old man is how impressed I am with some of the latest developments. I'm still just jazzed by my little Raspberry Pi here. But there's a word of caution. It is a lot of computer power, but the problem can be actually getting that computer power onto the problem. And the first thing that occurred to me when I'm hearing teraflop speed 18 cores is there a backplane, meaning a motherboard, that can actually support that traffic? Because you could have a situation where all of that computer power is just sitting and waiting while data is being moved in and out of RAM. And that can be very fast. To get the maximum performance out of a computer like this, you really have to be very careful that you tailor the hardware and software to the specific application to get your maximum throughput. And a lot of people in the computer animation industry, they'll buy computers that benchmark out at thus and such, and then they'll put their software on there, and they're not really seeing the throughput. And a lot of it often has to do with the fact that these high-powered processors are sitting and waiting for the disk drive to come back, the memory to come back, the interfaces to come back. So you have to be very careful about that and how you would design or possibly pipeline all of those cores. That being said, it is an amazing achievement. I remember when I was working in my animation career, and I worked briefly for a company that bought a connection machine by a company called Thinking Machines. And it had 8,000 processors in this black cube, and there were all these red lights all over the front of it. And they wanted to put a ray tracer on it. And I pointed out to them that the architecture of the connection machine did not lend itself to ray tracing, because while the 8,000 processors could work together very rapidly on certain classes of problems, it made a real nice Mandelbrot generator. It was very inefficient at shipping around large data sets, which are required for ray tracing. And as a demonstration, I threw one of my own pieces of software on a little Sun workstation that cost like a 20th of a connection machine, and I achieved 25% of the rendering throughput, which did not make me very popular with the management that had decided to invest in the connection machine. And then a little while later, I was briefly connected to the production of the first Jurassic Park movie. I worked for Sidley Wright Motion Works, and we pitched to them to do some of the animation work. We didn't get the job. But while I was there, I did talk to one of the producers about a story point in the original book where they were using Cray supercomputers to do the genome matching. And I said, that's not really an appropriate machine for this kind of work. You ought to look into the connection machine. And sure enough, in the movie, they're using Thinking Machines connection machines, supercomputers. That's my one tangible contribution to Jurassic Park. All right, we're going to take a phone call here. Tom in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good day, Michael. Speaking of Jurassic Park, I think that Kathy Griffin should be in Jurassic Park, buried somewhere. But
now, what did those T-Rexes ever do to you?
Yeah, right. Or the Raptors. But yeah, Michael, I'm so upset about this because if there would have been somebody doing that to Obama, they would already be in prison. It would be on the news for the next year. You wouldn't. It would be 24/7 on the news about what a Republican did to Obama, with Obama's head bleeding, bloody head cut off. Can you imagine this? You know what, Michael? What I'm kind of concerned. What happens if somebody actually, some crazy guy does get this Captain Griffin and takes care of her? You're going to hear about that in the news, I guarantee you that.
Yeah, I can imagine. It was way over the top here. It was way over the top, and as I said before, we're supposed to have a First Amendment guarantee to freedom of speech, but with that freedom comes the responsibility that what we are saying, first of all, is true and accurate and fair and just, and Kathy just went way over the top, and I'm glad she's feeling the backlash on it. It was wholly inappropriate for her to do that. All right, well, listen, Tom, we're going to take...
hold on. Hold on, Michael, I got something else I'd like to bring up.
All right, we'll keep you over the commercial break. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Tom in Florida. You had something else you wanted to share with us.
Yeah, Michael, I wanted to bring up the fact of a couple of days ago they had this incidents going on. I mean, this thing that's going on in Texas with the immigration. These illegals are protesting, and the congressman there, and they say he was going to shoot the other guy. And these Democrats are, Michael, what's going on is these people are here in this country illegally, breaking the law, and they're not. And the guy was right. He was going to call ICE and tell them to go get. They should be arrested. Now they had this guy Jorge Ramos on here, one of these local talk shows, and this guy's some guy called in and asked him, why don't we have the same laws as Mexico on our immigration? As far as immigration, that guy Jorge Ramos dodged the whole time. He kept ducking it. Well, Mexico's different than the United States. He kept saying, what's the difference, Jorge?
Well, I think it would be very appropriate for us to have the same immigration laws as Mexico. You can't just walk across the border into Mexico and get jobs and free stuff. You walk across that border into Mexico, you are going to jail. And, of course, it's right. A major stumbling point for the open borders people, where they're out there trying to say that everybody has a right to go anywhere they want in the world. And no, that is absolutely, there is no such right. They're making it up. Everybody loves to use that word. I have a right to take your TV set out of your living room because I'm economically disadvantaged. I have a right to come into your country and avail myself of the taxpayer-funded social services. And some of the arguments for the immigration people are getting ridiculous. There was an article we had at whatreallyhappened.com earlier today where they're out there saying that enforcement of immigration and deportations is going to be bad for the economy. It's already bad for the economy because all these poor illegal immigrants, they're staying at home. They're too scared to go on out and spend money at the stores, and that's what's harming the economy. Really, where are they getting the money that you think they're going to be spending at the stores? And it's just
there you go, Michael.
Absolute utter nonsense.
But Michael, these people are so brazen. They're illegally here, and they're protesting in the capital of Texas and telling the establishment government, like, screw you, we own this place. This is a disaster. And what's going on? You had these Democrats, congressman, he's a Hispanic congressman, attacking this guy because he wants the government to do their job. And this guy's getting threats and all that by these guys. Hey, look at this guy Gutierrez. This guy's paying his wife $13,000. I mean, if that was a Republican, they would be crucifying him right now in the media. It's unbelievable what's going on here. But as far as illegal immigration, Michael, like they had on Hannity a while back, there's over 100,000 gang members in Los Angeles alone. 100,000.
That's an army.
So that's an army. Exactly. Yep. That's a standing army, Michael. And look at all the ones in California. There's, 3.5 million illegals in that state? 4 million now?
Yep.
And the people are there are swinging. They're all going to Arizona, or Wyoming, Montana, whatever they can go, I guess. But what's going on in Texas is unbelievable. I mean, yeah, they should be all... Look, Michael, it's not like it hasn't happened before. Eisenhower rounded up 3 million of them.
Yes.
Back in 1955, 56. So I don't want to hear this crap from these liberal shrines that it can't be done. They can deport them all out of here if they have to. It might take 5 years. In 5 years, you can round them all up. 5, 6 years, but you can do it. Eisenhower did it in 2 or 3 years.
You don't even need to do that. Just enforce the existing Title VIII laws where anybody who is providing aid and comfort to an illegal immigrant can be arrested and thrown in jail. You cut off their employment. You cut off all the free stuff. And these illegal immigrants, rather than starve to death in the streets of the United States of America, they're going to go back over that border into Mexico.
You're absolutely right, Michael. 100% correct.
Okay?
Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
All right.
And, like I said, there's somebody homeless right now in the United States. It's a joke, and you're going to keep bringing people in here. I don't want to hear this crap. You can go down South Florida here and see there's hundreds of people downtown in Lauderdale and Miami that are not working, Michael. They're homeless. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. You're going to talk about bringing more people in here?
We have it here. We have an estimated 4,000 homeless people on the island of Oahu, and they're bringing in some of the refugees. They're bringing them in here as well. I mean, it really is. It's insane. It's completely, utterly insane. It only makes sense, of course, in the context of this push for a global government, a one-world government, ruling over a population of people who've just been blended together in order to destroy any sense of a cultural, regional, or historical identity. Anyway, Tom, we're going to
Michael, let's imagine this if Hillary had won. That's all I can tell you. Jeez. Thank God for Trump. That's all I can tell you.
Okay.
Blown out the country. All right, God bless you. Have a great day.
All right, same to you, Tom. We're going to switch over to Glenn in Philadelphia. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. It's a good thing you let him blow some steam. You definitely need the release valve to go on him.
I think he's drinking too much coffee.
Yeah, I called about the computer stuff. You're talking about the new chip for the computers, and the thing that struck me is they must have made some significant progress in these heat dissipation issues. I remember back to the early Cyrix chips that got up to 166 megahertz, and they were having problems back then, and they'd always have. And then they said the issue was like looking at this down at the
it may require active cooling.
Level.
I mean, this chip may require active cooling where there's, literally a liquid-based cooling system and a big heat exchanger out on the back. We're already seeing that with some of the higher-end graphics processors where air cooling isn't really sufficient. And so they literally have a little tiny refrigeration unit to keep the heat under control. Anybody who's going to buy this $2,000 chip for that kind of applications, obviously you're going to build a box around it that is going to try and maximize all of that. But there are liquid-based cooling systems for high-performance chips, especially people who love to overclock the chips.
That's right, and that's obviously a tower case type thing, desktop, I think. But for the laptops, I was thinking, I've heard, we're actually to the point now where they have all these faster things, and then they've had heat issues and fire issues with laptops too. So you have to make sure you keep your fan vents open and don't clutter up, and that's the thing. And they have cooling pads for laptops that you can get, but with laptops, there's this trade-off between performance, how hot your processor is, and how much RAM you use, and battery life. So it's actually a point where people have to start realizing if all I'm doing is surfing the web, even if I'm video streaming or maybe gaming, I don't necessarily need a laptop that is the super fastest thing in the world, but maybe I need it to last 2 hours, on a battery. So
that's what everybody. Not everybody needs an 8-core or even a 4-core processor. The only reason this machine here has 8 cores is because I do video or editing on it and 3D animation on it. But like the laptop that runs the Skype channel for that's a single CPU unit. That's all it really needs to be. And you're absolutely right.
My portable I take to work, I just need web and mail capability, and I get a good 2.5 hours out of it, which is really good. The other observation I wanted to make was about monitors and TVs. The way the full flat screen market has changed, the machining and materials and workmanship and everything like that. Somebody just gave me a 24-inch old a Dell monitor, several years old, that they had purchased, and it has this beautiful swivel. It's really nicely designed and nicely machined metal, and it's a swivel base that goes up and down and stuff like that. And it's got some weight to it for stabilization. And it's like, wow, they don't make like that anymore. And same with TVs. A friend of mine, all the TVs are coming out with 2 legs on them instead of a nice pedestal swivel base. It saves on weight for shipping, and it's cheaper and everything like that. So this stuff is becoming, like the TVs are really wow now. They're looking really good. But they're much more commoditized, much cheaper. But
I have one complaint about that, and then we're going to get off this because we got too far off into computers, and I want to get back to politics and the rest of the stories here. Is the software that comes with it? There are so many problems, and it's kind of weird. When we had our internet blackout on Sunday and Monday, we went back to our old DVD collection. And the first thing I did when I plugged in the disc on the DVD, it comes on up and says, oh, you need to have a firmware upgrade to the player before you can play this disc, which since we didn't have access to the internet, I couldn't actually do. And I'll tell you, one of the things that really annoys me about our TV, and this is coming out of, it's a Samsung unit, it's always updating its Smart Hub. And Claire and I will be watching TV, and we're having a good time, and all of a sudden this big box appears on the front of the screen. Your Smart Hub is now up to date. Do you care to start it? No, I don't. And it just gets in the way, and it interferes. I have to be very honest, there are days I miss old-fashioned TV. Glass tube, 2 knobs, off on volume, and the channel selector. And everyone says, oh, well, it took, minutes for those tubes to light up. Yeah, it takes minutes for these TVs to boot up on their internal software. And yes, it's higher resolution, and that's a really good thing. There's a lot more channels, but then all the channels are carrying the same thing. So it's not necessarily the wonderful leap forward that we like. Yes, there's progress that's been made. I do like high def. We hardly ever use the 3D, and I think 4K is going to be a passing fad. I don't think it's going to last. Certainly for people for people of Claire and our age across the living room here with our eyes, we're never going to tell the difference between normal high def and a 4K. That's just the reality, and that's why we're never going to get one. Anyway, Glenn, going to let you go here.
All right, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks an awful lot, and do join us on the air, 800-313-9443. Now, apparently, if you're an Android user, and this stuff is completely out of control, you may have been infected by advertising fraud malware that apparently was in the Google Play Store for years. And this malware is dubbed Judy by researchers at Checkpoint who discovered it, and it was discovered in 41 different applications in the Google Play Store. They're all made by this publisher, NStudio. Now, Google's already yanked these infected apps, but they have absolutely no idea how many people fell victim to this. Now, as you know, we try and keep the What Really Happened website as malware-free as possible. We pay for a service that scans the website every single day to make sure that we don't have malware. We've had a big problem with malvertisers who seem to be legitimate advertising companies, and they'll come on in, we'll place their ads, and all of a sudden they're serving malware to our readers. And it's a big headache always trying to track them down because they go through layer after layer after layer after server after server after server. So you can't tell who is actually doing what without a huge amount of effort. And it really did take us a while to track this last one down. And it really is out of control. And I want to share a couple of insights because I did work in advertising early on in my computer animation career because TV commercials were the only things that could afford computer animation back then. We're talking the 1980s. And there are rules in advertising, and one is you don't annoy your potential customer. The more aggressive advertising gets, the more it throws itself up in front of what you're trying to see, the more you're going to turn off the people. It doesn't translate to sales. And we know there's a lot of fraud going on in the online advertising industry with click bots that are clicking the ad links automatically using these click bot farms that are actually set for the purpose, and they're defrauding their clients. But the bottom line is I think people are beginning to realize numbers of clicks don't necessarily translate to numbers of sales. And I think more and more companies are going to be looking at how many sales are we actually getting out of this ad. Don't tell me how many clicks you got. I got 15 million clicks in one sale. That's not working for me. But the online advertising industry needs to look back at the basics of advertising as it has been established throughout the decades. Because there are rules in advertising, and those rules exist for a very good reason, because through trial and error, we know what is really working and what doesn't. And simply aggressively shoving yourself into the face of a potential customer, that's not going to work. You have to lure them. You have to intrigue them. You have to involve them mentally. Ask a question. Get them thinking about what they're seeing. That's where the creativity in advertising comes on in. There's a real dearth of it. So, and it is very angering when we find out that places like Google Play Store or the iTunes Store have been compromised, and what they are sending on out is infected with malware. It is totally out of control. And where's the NSA in all of this? Can't be found. Maybe they're behind some of it. Now, getting on back to WannaCrypt, very interesting revelation. This came out of the register in Great Britain. Apparently the WannaCrypt ransomware was primarily targeting Windows XP machines, even though it's been officially sunsetted. But apparently one of the things that prevented it from spreading too far was the WannaCrypt was actually crashing the XP systems. And this is a case of where the blue screen of death was actually saving your life on this malware. But it underscores something else. Remember that WannaCrypt was built with NSA hacking tools that were leaked out and placed on the dark web. And it seems like all these NSA tools are still living in the days of XP. Like maybe they have not been able to update them to Windows 7, 8, Windows 10. Nobody can get Windows 10 to work. So maybe revealing that the NSA hacking toolkit is actually outdated. Now, there's been another development regarding WannaCry. As you know, they were out there saying, oh, it's definitely North Korea, it's North Korea, it's not, oh, no, it's Russia, it's Russia, it's Russia. But apparently some experts over at Kaspersky Labs is saying that the indications they're seeing in the code outside of the NSA building blocks point squarely at China as the author of WannaCry. Now, maybe it's CIA using their special department for false flag cyber attacks. But it really is very hard to tell. Meanwhile, as if we didn't have enough headaches, this is coming out of RIMP.com. The CIA is expanding an existing program that tries to influence corporate media outlets to promote fake propaganda stories by having their online shills troll internet forums, social media, and website comment sections in an effort to disrupt independent media sites. They're trying to come on in and cause trouble, and I assume that means calling up talk radio shows and screaming about Jews this and Jews that so that they can say, oh, they're anti-Semites over there. But it is a massive propaganda effort. They're so busy trying to fight against the truth, they don't have any resources left over to deal with real crime and terror, do they? We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, over in Ethiopia, as you know, it's the end of the school year in a lot of places, and the students are getting ready to do their exams, and apparently the use of personal electronic devices to cheat has become so widespread that Ethiopia has shut off the internet for the entire country during exams week. Little extreme. I think just shutting off the Wi-Fi routers in the schools might be sufficient, but that's what they decided they wanted to do with that. Here's another example of why the hacking has gone completely out of control, and it's sort of another version of ransom attack. But apparently over in Lithuania, there is this plastic surgery clinic, the Grozio Chirurgia Clinic, and their servers got broken into by a group calling themselves the Tsar Team, and they basically looted all the patient records. And then they contacted all the patients and said, unless you send us ransom, we will post all the pictures of your plastic surgery before and after, including naked photos of them that were taken as part of the preparation for whatever plastic surgery they were going to have. And apparently a lot of the patients either could not or would not pay it, and so the material has been released online, which can be very traumatic for a lot of people. But I think cybercrime has really reached a point of being a clear and present danger to the economy of the nation itself. And I think it's time that the NSA, FBI, and CIA quit their war on those of us who want to tell the truth and actually do what their job descriptions are. Go after these criminals. Because we're reaching a point where the Internet as a whole is becoming a very, very dangerous place to do business on. And I know that those rulers who are just sick and tired of having their lies exposed constantly would be perfectly okay going back to the 1950s, where business was done by telephone and postal letter, but I don't think it's really realistic at all. And I do think it's time for something to really be done. There needs to be a national agenda of dealing with cybercrime. Ransomware writers, hackers, DOS attackers. There are things that can be implemented at the Internet level to guarantee absolute tracking of where things are coming from. And it is reaching a crisis point. the sheer cost, the losses in productivity, the losses, the economic losses, it's a crisis, and it does need to be dealt with. So, again, technology is neither good or bad, whether it's computers, TV sets, even firearms. It is the people deciding how to use them that is good or evil. Going to take a break for station identification. Back after this brief word. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443.